What's up, party people, and welcome back to another episode of NYC Foodways, your weekly food and culture discussion from the cultural capital of the world. My name is John, and this week's episode is dedicated to Jiddu Krishnamurti, the sage, who taught us that being well adjusted to a sick society is not a sign of good health. Are you having a rough go of it? Does it seem like no matter what you do, you always come up short? Is the world out to get you? And just how bad can your luck get? Fans of cinematic misery will do whatever the inverse of jump for joy is, collapse in pain, while watching Alain Corneau's 1979 Ode to Awfulness Série Noire. This week on NYC Foodways, we turn our crying eyes to a bleak film set in a bleak neighborhood located in a bleak city in a bleak world of negativity, cowardice, violence, self-doubt, and horror. And that's putting it mildly. As anyone who has attempted to create a positive outcome from a negative action knows, we cannot escape for ourselves that which we bring unto others. So let this movie be a warning to those of you planning to, steal from your boss, or pimp out your teenage niece to strange men, or trick a friend into taking the rap for your misdoings, or even just lie to your wife. It will catch up to you. It always does. To call Série Noire a tragedy is to call Westland a decent artist. Its characters are frequently horrible to themselves and others, and one is filled with nothing more than an intense desire for everything to just work out, for all, for once. But of course I wouldn't be talking at you on the subject today if such a thing occurred in this unbelievably depressing film. Série Noire roughly translates as a string of bad luck, but it also refers to a hard-boiled style of detective novel, and this film is indeed based on a 1950s American crime novel titled A Hell of a Woman. As usual, I'll keep the plot details light. An unreliable and possibly mentally ill man named Frank makes a series of poor choices based on the advancement of self, and everyone around him pays the price. And boy, is the price high. Do not watch this movie with your children. Do watch this movie with someone who can appreciate the raw pathos of a brilliant actor, the film star Patrick Dewaere, who met an early death by his own hand not long after the film was initially released. Dewaere is so good in this movie, and I mean that in the purely artistic sense, that his performance almost transcends description. There are few actors that I can think of that have given so much of themselves to a role, and I shudder to think of the off-screen pain this man undoubtedly carried so as to be so open and giving of himself to others. Série Noire is, at base, about the perils of ignoring the call of your conscience. Even the most low-level man hears a voice that attempts to keep him on the path of good. "Don't mess around, Frankie. This is not your moment," Frank says to himself, a call he ignores, and in doing so sets himself on a path of destruction. Throughout the film, Frank continues to wrestle with his conscience, which refuses to quiet down until he aligns his actions with it. However, Frank is too self-absorbed and egotistical to be honest with himself about himself, and despite his inner voice attempting to dissuade him, he continues on his egocentric journey with heinous results. This guy is the type of fellow so unable to take responsibility for anything that he will lose his balance on the sidewalk and angrily blame the non-existent person who waxed the floor. "Name one guy who's been as unlucky as me," cries this employed, healthy, able-bodied man who lives in a modern house with his healthy, able-bodied wife. "It's not my fault," he whines, knowing full well it is. "Why me?" he asks, as if it could never be about anyone else. I saw Série Noire at the Metrograph a few years back, and what stuck with me then was how dark it was, but I'd forgotten how stressful too. The film's central dramatic piece is so frenetic it made my heart race, despite knowing full well how things were going to play out. This movie is raw. I think that's probably the best descriptor here. The weather is raw, the emotions of the characters are raw, the setting of rundown homes and decrepit buildings is raw, and the physical force the actors bring to bear is raw. Série Noire features actual choking, slapping, punching, and the repeated slamming of one's own head into an inanimate object. Série Noire is not playing around, despite a recently released trailer that would have you believe it is, at least in part, some sort of silly romantic romp. And it's not for everyone either, even long-standing New York Times film critics, apparently. Noted dumbass Vincent Canby, excuse me, that was low energy. Vincent Canby, whose opinion I frequently disagree with, despite his 25 years as the chief film critic at the Times, didn't much like it. He called Série Noire a semi-serious parody and gravely artificial. Right. There are some important questions asked by this film for those who are willing to hear them, like, why don't you play it straight? Does being honest, accountable, forthright, and dedicated seem too difficult? Are you concerned there's not enough of it to go around, so you have to hoard as much of it as possible? Or do you really think that the rules don't apply to you, that the world, and the rest of us in it, are here for your use and advancement? Série Noire is a brisk tonic against these notions, and the viewer would be wise to take note. Do not exploit others to enrich yourself. Do not manipulate those around you so as to progress your own self-interest. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. My mentor says that success weighs ounces, but regret weighs tons, and by that metric, Série Noire is as heavy as an anvil. It's also as painful as an amputation, with some unexplained glimpses of madness, along with a scene featuring David Lynch levels of bizarre, involving a man with a swastika tattoo, a stolen beer, and a deep, doubly French kiss between two dudes. The ending of this movie is empty, nihilistic, and hopeless. How could it be anything else? Let it be a warning to you all. Live right or pay the price. You cannot escape the future you request with your behavior. If you ask for it, one of the characters in the film says, and he could be speaking here of actions as much as words, you get it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for another episode of NYC Foodways. Peace.